establishing the kind of transformation, enabling the kind of transformational action we need to see. Having said that, this particular session will be, sorry, we seem to be having some technical difficulties. Apologies. Is it okay now? Yes, perfect. So this particular session, I'm pleased to announce, will be chaired by Mr. Tariq Hamman, who's the Executive Director and Head of Development at Mazen, a very key stakeholder in Morocco and regionally when it comes to renewable energy. Mr. Hamman has almost 20 years of managerial experience in leading the development of large-scale infrastructure and power generation projects. Without further ado, Mr. Hamman, I'm particularly excited for your chairmanship of this session and the impressive panel that you have assembled. The floor is yours, the virtual floor.
Mr. Mohsin, do you hear me? So, I hope you hear me. You can maybe make a sign.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So, welcome to everybody. It's my pleasure to be the moderator of this session. Welcome to the session 6, dedicated to the power to X and renewables. As you know, one of the main challenges that face the development of power to X energy is the cost, and especially the green production from green renewables. So today we have a panel of distinguished panelists where we are going to discuss this main challenge, which is the cost of production of products from power to X. So this session aims to put the technical challenges of renewable energy under the spotlight. On top of that, it's come to shed light on the cost challenges facing the renewables within the power to X economy. Having said that, it is essential to present ways to optimize the cost of power to X products and units. In addition, it is expected to show how this new industry can position itself against traditional fossil fuels based industries, taking advantage of economies of scale and reducing material price. Last but not least, this session will discuss the potential of coupling power to X and renewables. So for that, we have with us Mr. Paul Van Soon, who is President and CEO of DI. Mr. Van Soon has
Mr.
Van Soon has been active for more than 14 years in various superior board, executive and operation management position in international energy, grid infrastructure and gas businesses. Based in Munich and Dubai, he is the founding CEO of DII, Desert Energy, which was originally named Desertec and Industry Initiative. This international group of companies aims at paving the way for countries in North Africa and the Middle East to become an emission-free energy powerhouse for their own benefit, but also for the export. We have also with us Mr. Dimitar Enchiv, who is Managing Director in Post-Scriptum Venture, a company we're developing renewables and the Power to X project. Mr. In-Chief has more than 15 years of experience working in renewable energy industry and investment. He started his career at Postscriptum Venture in London and focused on sustainable investment. We have also with us Mr. Abdilah Shami, who is head of sustainability and CSV at Enel Green Power. Mr. Dr. Shami works in the value chain of different products around sustainability with Enel Green Power. We have also with us Mrs. Hanan Morshid, who is Vice President of Circular Economy and Sustainable Platform at OCP. She is an engineer in industrial process and, of course, has started his career with a different position in OCP, including working on the field on SAFI. We have also with us Mr. Miguel, the CEO of Energy Services. Mr. Man. So we will start with Mr. Van Soen. The floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ramane. It's really a pleasure to be virtually today in Casablanca. You already said that we are working from DII Desert Energy from Munich and Dubai, but today I'm sitting in the Netherlands. So we are really all over the place. It is also an honor to be invited for this session from the background of this old-fashioned desert tech, as you mentioned. This idea started 11 years ago to connect actually two continents. And in those days, Morocco was one of the pioneers. And today, we see that Morocco is also a pioneer in PTX and hydrogen, green ammonia, and so on. So this fits very well together. I now hope that I can find the way to go to my sheets. Can you see my presentation?
We can't see your presentation right now.
I think something went wrong. I asked the organization this morning if we can share my presentation from the organization.
If you have difficulty sharing your screen, Mr. Vanson, we will do it. We are sharing your presentation, Mr. Vassan. You can continue.
Yeah, that's very good. So it works. So we can go to the next sheet then. And that is a little bit the background in which the discussion of today is taking place. I mean, we are working on PTX, and PTX, we all know that the basis for PTX, of course, is the green energy basically from North Africa, from Morocco and from other countries. In Morocco, the green energy is mainly based on photovoltaic or solar energy and wind energy. In the previous time, we worked together with many countries and initiated by Germany, actually, by the German industry in the so-called studies on desert tech. We call it today Desert Tech 1.0. Initially, the focus was very much on exporting electricity from North Africa to Europe. But very soon we abandoned this priority and we said, like in 2014, let's go to the move from Germany to the region, to North Africa, Middle East, and then work with the countries and with the industry toward a market for renewable energy, because that's the basis. There will be no PTX if there is not a market, a well-developed market for renewables. And we have been very lucky to see in the last 5 years that renewables today is all over the place in each country almost. In North Africa, Middle East, there's a strong acceleration of projects. We call this actually Desertec 2.0. That it means that the region is starting to become a powerhouse for itself, so that the energy in the region will become emission-free. And I think where we stand today, or in the last few years, is that the region can now slowly start thinking of exporting green energy to other countries, to Europe, but also to sub-Saharan Africa maybe, and in any case to the world energy markets. And we call that today, Desertec 3.0. So it's working together, and the main focus is on the region to become somehow emission-free, and green electrons, so the electricity, and green molecules, which actually is PTX. PTX is actually from green electrons to green molecules. So we can go to the next sheet. And this is a little bit the picture, and it's, I think, good for everyone, because there was always a lot of confusion about what is Desertec, did Desertec fail, how is this going? And here we see the 3 phases of this Desertec. So it started, and we cannot blame this to anyone, but 10 years ago, the world was very different as it is today. It was more an initiative from Europe, but also very soon Mazen was the first to shake hands and the energy ministry and Iruzen in Morocco, they were the real pioneers. And in the years afterwards, we saw that each country in the Arab region took the initiative for their own purpose. And where we stand now today is how to connect this and bring from Morocco, from Algeria, from Tunisia, from all the other countries, this green energy into the world. And then we can go to the next sheet. I think it's, if you talk about today about the cost of PTX, then it's always good to see in that framework will this be placed, because it's, at the end of the day, cost is a relative issue. And it depends on the system, on what value and what purpose and where the cost level leads to. I think the most important thing is that the MENA countries, so each country in the region, it takes the lead in this energy transition to bring actually the cost down by economy of scale, by taking all the measures. And that will bring this region to this so-called green powerhouse. And the purpose is local benefits, jobs, and synergies. So if we talk about costs, we should also factor in qualitatively the added value of having more jobs and more local benefits to the communities, to the industries, to the world locally. So it's not only the hard cost issue, but also like what is in the country, what belongs to this cost. And I think if we discuss the cost issue, then we always have to keep the entire energy value chain in mind. So it is a bottom up, the bottom-up approach from the demand, but also the top-down approach from the large generation of energy. So it's about production on one hand and flexible demand on the other hand, and then the role of the conversion from green electrons to green molecules. At the end of the day, it is also about connecting markets. So if we talk about costs, then we have to compare this with costs in other markets and how to connect these markets. Is it via electricity? Is it via certain molecules like hydrogen or ammonia or other synthetic fuels and gases? And then last but not least, in this role, in this the value chain is the role of storage. So it will play a very high role if we have to cope with high flexibility or high volatility of demand and production. The role of storage is getting larger, and that is not only storage in the sense of electrical batteries or storage of hydrogen, but also thermal energy storage and hydro energy storage. So the next sheet. And about cost, and we all know these pictures. The good news about the cost is that the production of green hydrogen can be based on solar and wind energy, which gets cheaper every day, especially in Morocco and also in the UAE. We see cost levels of PV approaching 1 cent per kilowatt hour. And wind is also a couple of cents per kilowatt hour. Solar thermal is still larger, but solar thermal is still a part of the game because it is emission-free energy. And if you see the coal and the gas production, that is at a rather high level. It's not competitive anymore, even if we do not factor in emissions. So we can go to the next sheet. And this gives the picture that we all know, and in the whole conference, I'm sure that many speakers are talking on this, and in our session will be also the issue, the learning curve of photovoltaic technology and of battery packs, lithium ion, but also power to X, so electrolyzers, is going down and down and down. And I'm not the one to give here a lot of cost numbers because I have learned in many years, I can say more than 40 years I'm active in the industry, and whatever you tell about cost in the future, it will always be wrong. And even if I give very optimistic figures, it may well be that in 10 years people say you were too pessimistic. What we have also learned from the last 10 years. But about a little bit of figures, I already mentioned that green electricity will cost about something like 1 cent per kilowatt hour in many regions, especially in sun-rich regions. And with 1 cent per kilowatt hour, you may arrive at 80 cents per kilogram of green hydrogen. So just to name a ballpark number, but as I said, this is a perspective in the future. I'm pretty sure about the green electricity because we are already there almost. But about hydrogen, a lot has to be done, and that is also part of the discussion of today. So the next sheet, please. This is the sheet about hydrogen itself, the cost of electrolyzers. It is, of course, as I said, depending on the green power price, but also the operating hours and many more factors, actually. And in the green molecules or the PTX value chain are a lot of components, as we said, like storage and transportation and conversion at the demand side. So the next sheet. This is another way of showing the whole circus on the production side or the generation side on the left, like PV, CSP, wind, hydro. And this is also, of course, competing with the fossils that I'm not showing here because I don't like fossils. Then everything about conversion from the electrons to the molecules, everything about transmission and transportation, everything about energy storage. And on the demand side will become the most interesting one. It is the electricity demand. We have desalination demands, transportation, transport, e-mobility, and of course the industries, the decarbonizing of the industry on the basis of molecules, on the basis of green hydrogen and related subjects like fertilizers, like we see in Morocco. And I see OCI, for instance, is a pioneer again in using green ammonia and green hydrogen for the fertilizer industry, fertilizer production. But also steel industry is going that way, especially in Germany. Many factories are looking at green hydrogen, and we see many more examples. So important is that this is a balance on the production and the demand side, which fits together, so that the flexibility that is needed is offered at a low cost in the system, and hydrogen or the molecules can offer a great added value to this flexibility. So then the next sheet. Here I want to show you that that many people in Europe are not aware of, especially not in Germany, is that the region made a tremendous step in the direction of green electricity projects, like solar, wind, PV. We are keeping a database of all the projects above 5 megawatts, and we're counting a while ago, and I'm quite sure it's more today. A while ago, it was 1,250 projects in the region on solar and wind. So we see that this region is ready also for this conversion. First of all, ready to become green itself, and then ready also to produce hydrogen. So the next sheet. I want to show again that there is also a lot of, I would say, confusion about the new wave of hydrogen. People then think all of a sudden that electricity transport is not relevant anymore. That's definitely not the case, because electricity, so connecting electrical grids, is also something that will remain important. Especially in Morocco, there is a very interesting project we are involved in, a preparation of a cable link between Morocco, and also Mazen is involved, and the UK. So just to show you that there is a lot going on, there is also a very interesting cable link prepared between the United Arab Emirates and India, for instance. So just to give you an idea that this is not dead, and this is becoming, or this is still a sort of competitor to the green molecules in the transportation. So the next sheet. The very good news for green molecules like hydrogen, it could be also other molecules, but let's start with hydrogen, is the fact that a lot of infrastructure, especially the gas infrastructure in Europe and also in North Africa, and Morocco is part of it, can be used, of course, to mix or to blend hydrogen with the natural gas, and at the end of the day, ultimately, to have only or to allow only green molecules in the existing infrastructure. That means a very low cost in the transportation. So the next sheet. This afternoon, we will also discuss this at length, especially in the framework of the cooperation between Europe and North Africa, the so-called MENA Hydrogen Alliance. So it was initiated by Frank Wouters, who is the panel leader this afternoon. And there are a lot of companies and institutions like the Energy Ministry of Morocco and Mazen and other institutions, and also NEOM, for instance, in Saudi Arabia, and Aqua Power. that are a part of this hydrogen alliance. And we discuss actually all topics of the markets, but also especially of the cost. One important tool that we have developed also to keep track of costs and to see what are the cost items and how you can get this learning curve is the so-called hydrogen financial modeling and a toolkit for some of the levelized costs of hydrogen. So I don't go into detail here. It's just to mention this is if there's any interest. This is all for free, by the way. So this cost model can be used to whoever is interested. Then the next sheet. Also, I want, of course, to point at a book that we wrote last year on it said emission-free energy from the deserts. And this is a book that actually explains, first of all, the whole process. How did we get here all together? Also the countries and North Africa, North Europe, and the Middle East. And also that old idea of 10 years ago was maybe crazy, and that's also good to start with a crazy idea. But now it has become reality. So nobody should say that this failed. And Morocco can be proud that Morocco was one of the pioneers. And you see today where Morocco stands. It has the highest degree of green energy built from this solar and wind basis. We are about to translate this into French together also with some partners in North Africa. And we will inform you how to get there. But I can, of course, recommend this book. And there is a lot of discussion in the book about the cost levels and about the price levels of energy. So I would say this is just an appetizer for the discussion. Unfortunately, we are virtually together, and I hope that we can one day be again physically together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Vanson, for this great presentation, presenting the state of art in the development of renewable energy and power to X in the region, and also the evolution of the price and what is expected for the future. It's clearly shown that the region of North Africa and MENA in general is one of the great potential in terms of production of renewable energy and, by the way, green hydrogen, and will be clearly positioned as a leader in terms of exporting such green hydrogen power to it. For that, I have a question. What is, in your point of view, the priority? What priority shall be given to green hydrogen in the energy value chain in comparison with the renewables, with storage, grid expansion, and flexibilization of demand?
Yeah, I think and that's a very important question that you ask, because we see now a new wave of hydrogen and PTX, which is very important and it's also very necessary. But we all have to be aware that PTX, the basis of PTX is green energy. So the priority, of course, should be with the basics. And but that should not mean that we should not push for green hydrogen or green molecules, but in the right order. Because we see very often discussions where people think, well, we need hydrogen, green hydrogen, but they think this is the only purpose. And the purpose actually is to reduce emissions and to have lower costs. And as you know, at the beginning, in the first phase, we will not reduce emissions by adding hydrogen to the energy value chain. That will come later. And also an important priority is on the demand side to make demand more flexible. I would say the thermal energy should become, when it becomes more flexible, and also electric vehicles and all that desalination, it will help to make more green capacity in the existing system possible. So to your question, I would say the first priority is the focus should be on green energy as such, but do not forget to the pressure on green molecules.
Another question I have in mind here is, in your point of view, to what extent will a strong cap on emission lead to a steeper learning curve of green power to X?
Yeah, I think we see everywhere. I maybe already said that the whole purpose of green hydrogen or green PTX actually is to lower emissions and at the end also to the lowest cost. You can help this process by putting a cap on these emissions, because in those areas where there is no penalty against emissions, there is not this pressure to go that way. So in that sense, if we see, if we put a very high pressure, even going to penalizing, or in a market way like a cap and trade, if this is a meaningful pressure, then this will put pressure on the development or the innovations of the old technology for PTX. So in that sense, more application or attention to emission reduction will speed up this transition to PTX.
And we hope in that field that Europe will be also pushing for that with all the regulation which is expected to be around enhancing this low emission, and that will help to position countries, North Africa and Mid East, to be well positioned in order to address this market. Thank you very much, Mr. Vanson, for this great presentation. And we will now go to the second panelist, Mr. Dimitar Enchiv, who is a managing partner of Post-Scriptum Venture. I personally have the pleasure to meet with you and people from your organization, explaining and also having some great information about the development you are pursuing in Europe, but also in our region, North Africa, and also in Australia. So we would be very happy to hear from you what is the new development and what is expected to be done by your company. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. I hope you can hear me well and you can see my screen. If not, please stop me and let me know. Yeah.
It's perfect. We can see you.
Excellent. Thanks. So first, a few words about who we are. CWP, which is a subsidiary of Postscriptum, is a developer of large-scale wind and solar projects. We started 15 years ago in Europe, and in the last 10 years, we've gone into Australia, where we've become one of the largest independent developers of renewable energy. We've always been a pioneer, and we've tried to push the envelope. So in Europe, in 2008, when the average wind farm was 50 megawatts, we developed a 600 megawatt project and built it 12 years ago. That is still the largest onshore wind farm in Europe. In Australia, we've done a lot of wind, but we've also done hybrid projects, so combining wind and solar and storage. We've done one of the world's, I think, first and one of the largest base load PPAs from renewable power with the largest bank in Australia. So we've tried to push the envelope a little bit, and we've always tried to be a pioneer, and we are trying to be a pioneer in what we think is the most exciting new field of renewable energy, and that is PTX. And when we talk about PTX, we don't look at it as something like an alternative to renewable energy. We see it as two sides of the same coin. So in Australia, 5 years ago, a little bit like Desert Tech, we started a crazy project called the Asian Renewable Energy Hub. And that has become, much like Desert Tech, from a crazy dream, it's become a reality. And in the last few weeks, we made the news because we got a permit for the first 15 gigawatts of renewable capacity, and we got what is called a major project status by the federal government of Australia, essentially signaling that the Australian government is firmly behind the project and signaling that Australia, which is one of the largest exporters of fossil fuels, sees green hydrogen and green ammonia as the future of its export industry. And they see it as a way to use their massive resource of renewable energy and create a new export industry to replace coal and gas. A little bit about the project. So we are one of the developers behind it, together with a company called Intercontinental Energy. We've got a couple of small shareholders, Vestas and Macquarie, our minority shareholders. The project is 26 gigawatts of renewable energy, 6,600 square kilometers. So it's unbelievable scale. It is the largest renewable energy project in the world. Started in 2015. As I said, we just received our first permit a few weeks ago. And although the area where we are, it has about 3 gigawatts of electricity demand for mining mostly. It has 2 million liters of diesel consumption, again, for mining. What we see as the main purpose of the project, the main focus, is export of green molecules. And we see green ammonia as the low-hanging fruit, the most viable green molecules that are within reach. It is important here to say that the project is still years away from starting construction. We are working on a feasibility design, but we have gone a long way into the techno-economic feasibility, and we think that it is becoming a reality, right? It is technically and economically viable now. Why do we need projects like that? I mean, this project, it's 26 gigawatts. It's absolutely unbelievable scale. Well, the reason why we need projects like that is because we are aiming to decarbonize the whole global economy. And if you look at electricity alone, that is responsible for about 30% of emissions. 70% comes from transportation, agriculture, industry. And if you look at the slide I'm showing now, we've already got large economies that have committed to become carbon neutral by 2050, in China's case by 2060. And those economies account for about half the global economy, right? Those countries. The US, with the new administration, I personally expect and hope it will happen next year or within the next few years. That will push the overall kind of decarbonization target to 3/4 of the global economy. And when you talk about decarbonizing the whole global economy, you can't do that with electricity alone, right? You need molecules. You need green molecules. And the scale of the challenge is absolutely phenomenal. This is why when we think about PTX and when we're developing, when we're thinking about projects, we're thinking about these mega scale projects like the one we have in Australia. So it is all about scale. And to illustrate that point, I hope this animation works. So this is your average wind farm, right? 100 megawatts. This is the 600 megawatt Fontanelle project, which we developed in 2008, still the largest onshore wind farm in Europe this year. This is the Asia Renewable Energy Hub, 26 gigawatts. And this, in comparison, is the total green ammonia market we see developing by 2050, right? So it's about 60 projects like ours by 2050 if the world is going to replace the green ammonia or the ammonia demand that we see with green. And how does that break down? We see the fertilizer market, which is going to grow obviously as more people need more food. We see, according to DNVGL, there will be marine shipping fuel demand for green ammonia of 120 million tons, and then the Japanese have put in place ambitious targets for co-firing green ammonia into their coal fleet for decarbonization. So it's a massive number. You need 1,500 gigawatts. This is gigawatts with a G of renewables to decarbonize just these three markets that I'm talking about, and that accounts for 4% of global emissions. So when we think about global decarbonizing the global economy, it is all about scale. So this is also the way to get to a lower cost, and this is what my next slide is going to talk about. So this is our vision, and our vision is quickly becoming a reality. But this is our vision for the cost of green ammonia. Again, we see a lot of other uses for green hydrogen, but we are focused on green ammonia because it is the low-hanging fruit, the easiest, most within reach green molecule for an export project like ours. So what does this slide say? We think that green ammonia cost of $350 to $400 per ton is within reach. This is not today, this is 5 years from now, but it is within reach, more or less, with today's technology and cost curves. Half of it comes from the electricity. This is our simulation for a combined large scale. So when you run the numbers, half of the cost of the ammonia comes from the electricity. This is not surprising, obviously. It is power to X after all. And these are based on assumptions, again, of a hybrid of wind and solar. Then about a quarter comes from the hydrogen plant, the electrolysis, and then another quarter comes from the ammonia plant and all the accompanying infrastructure. So what's important here is two things. One, electricity, the cost of electricity matters. And then the second thing is, if you have a small reduction in the cost of electricity by $2, it's going to change by 5% the cost of ammonia, right? So it is important to be placing these mega projects in the world's best locations with the best resource. But the other thing that is really important for us, and this is why we chose the site in Australia where we chose it, is that half of your cost comes from the amortization of your downstream, your electrolyzers and your ammonia plant. And that means that in order to get to these numbers, in order to get to the lowest cost of ammonia, you need both wind and solar, because you need to be able to have a high utilization rate, right? In Australia, we've got wind and solar that are very complementary. The wind is at night, the solar is during the day, so we get to a 70+% capacity factor, combined capacity factor. If you're only powering your downstream, your ammonia and electrolysis with solar, and you don't have access to the grid, this cost here, the downstream cost, hydrogen and ammonia, it effectively doubles because you're using your very expensive downstream half as much. So key value drivers. Scale, it matters a lot, especially when you talk about ammonia. A world scale ammonia plant is 2 million tons per year. And that means that you need 4 or 5 gigawatts of renewables to power that. you have very pronounced economies of scale in ammonia production. So scale matters. Obviously, it matters for the downstream, for the upstream as well, meaning the wind and the solar. The bigger you are, the lower the cost. But it is the most important thing about scale is in the ammonia production. The cost of energy matters, is the main value driver. Hybridization matters. If you have a good wind and a good solar resource, you're going to get to a lower cost than just with wind or solar alone. Again, talking about these remote power-to-X sites which are not connected to the grid. Flexibility matters. If you have a more flexible downstream, meaning ammonia and electrolysis, that's going to lower the cost of the buffering you need for the system when you're powering with intermittent renewables. And then the other thing that matters, and is actually a value game changer, is access to H2 storage. If you have hydrogen storage, underground storage, that is inexpensive, that means that your cost of running a renewables powered ammonia facility goes down quite a bit, and you can use this hydrogen storage, again, if it's inexpensive, you can use it to time shift the renewables. You can use it to essentially take overproduction when you don't need that power, produce, turn it into hydrogen, store it in the ground, and then use that later when you don't have either wind or solar. You can't do that with batteries. At least it is our view that battery storage is not cheap enough, and it won't be cheap enough in the next 5 to 10 years to do time shifting with batteries. Because again, remember, it's all about the cost of energy. If you're not $20 or less per megawatt hour, the numbers don't work and you can't be competitive. So these are the main value drivers. Again, these are the value drivers for the best sites in the PTX sites in the world for very large scale, like the one we have in Australia. And I think reaching those numbers, reaching $300 to $400 per ton of green ammonia, that makes us very optimistic, because that is within striking distance from the current price of gray ammonia. And you need a very small change in the price, or a very small emissions price, which we believe is coming in many places, and especially in Europe, to make green ammonia the better alternative. So that means this massive market, which today is 200 million tons, but we see it growing to 500 million tons. This massive market could begin to get decarbonized by very large scale power-to-X projects. So that was my 3 slides or 4 slides. Very happy to answer any questions now.
Thank you very much, Dimitar, for this great presentation. It's clearly demonstrates that one of the main challenges that facing the development of power-to-X and green hydrogen, it's clearly the cost. And the main work that everybody is trying now to do is to reduce the cost. Of course, this starts by looking to the great combination of green generation, wind and solar, in order to reach the most high capacity factor within the lowest cost. And it's clear that the hybridization here between solar and wind is the key combination. Another point, of course, is the scale. And we see in this in your presentation that we should move to a more large-scale project, because each of the equipment and component are mature itself, but the question is how to integrate all of them and to scale up in order to reduce the cost. And here, my question is, what is, in your point of view, the appropriate path to have in the development of this project, in development of the power-to-X industry in general? What should be the scale of the project, in the next 5 years, taking in consideration also different aspects, the offtake, because here also in order to structure and to make the project bankable and to get the financier, we have to secure the offtake. And there is maybe two way of securing the offtake, to get a total off-taker for the whole quantity, or to address the market. This is the first question. What is your point of view on that? Second question will be related to the location of such large-scale project. What is your point of view of the advantage and also of Morocco and MENA region, and what is the position that this region can and should take to address this market? And third question is relating to the final product. So here you clearly address ammonia because it's a big market. The need is clearly defined. The prices are clearly known, and also what is for you the other project we can address by this Power to X development in the nearest future. Thank you.
Thanks. Those are great questions. I'll try to get through them quickly. First of all, on the scale of the project. So what we have is a crazy large project, right? It is 26 gigawatts. And obviously, this is not how this industry starts, right? No one's going to build a project like that without first doing a lot of other steps. An important thing to say here is that we're a developer, and the way we think about this is through the development angle. So we started this project 5 years ago, and this is we're still several years away from starting construction, and probably 10 years away, or maybe even more, from fully building that project. So when we talk about these massive projects, these are very long lead development jobs. And if we want to decarbonize the whole global economy by 2050, well, when you talk about changing a paradigm shift in the whole global infrastructure, changing the whole global infrastructure, well, 2050 is tomorrow morning, right? You can't get there if you don't start now and if you don't think big. So, our project is going to be producing green ammonia at full scale in 2030, and we started 5 years ago. So we think that the short answer to your question is you have to do both, right? You have to start planning the big projects. You have to start developing the big projects. But absolutely what companies, pioneers like OCP are doing, for example, with the smaller projects, with the pilots, proving the concept, the issue from another angle, I think this is absolutely necessary as well. So the answer is both, right? You're going to have, the world needs a lot of projects, small and big, and it's going to be a journey that is going to have a lot of both. On the location, Morocco, I mean, as you very well know, and this is the reason why we know each other personally, we are very keen on Morocco. I think Morocco has one of the best natural advantages for doing large-scale PTX projects. It has very strong wind conditions and very, very good solar resource. So that means that Morocco is uniquely positioned to make very low-cost green hydrogen and green ammonia on the one hand. And then on the other hand, you have OCP, which is one of the largest consumers of ammonia in the world. So I think Morocco is probably uniquely positioned to lead the green ammonia revolution and to have major impact on the world in that regard. And of course, North Africa has a lot of similar characteristics as well, but I think Morocco is probably ahead of the curve on that one. And the strength of its institutions and the local players there is also, it is one of the pioneers in the PTX game. And the final question was on the final product, right? So we see green ammonia as the kind of the first thing to come. You need to start from somewhere, and you need to have a viable economic case to start building this. And then the other thing that we see that is within striking distance, economically speaking, is green steel. So we are in the Pilbara of an area in Western Australia, which is the largest exporter of iron ore in the world, and we are working on green steel manufacturing as well, using the green hydrogen. So these are the two things that we see, again, talking about large-scale PTX projects where you need to export something, right? These are the two things that we see as coming first, as being viable first. Now, you have a whole lot of different business models on PTX, right? You can make hydrogen locally and inject it into a gas network. You can make other things like methanol or aviation fuel, whatever, locally, with grid-connected electrolyzers, and that's a different business model. And I'm not saying that it's one or the other, right? The world is going to need a lot of different PTX business models and technologies. But for large-scale export-oriented PTX projects, we think that green ammonia and green steel are the first to come. Hope that answered the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mitan. We are now going to move to the third panelist, Mr. Abdel Shami, who is the head of sustainability and CSV at Enel Green Power Morocco. Mr. Shami, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sitarek. It's a pleasure being with you today. So I try to share my screen. Let me know if you see it, please. Perfect. So first of all, thank you so much for, I will say, raising up this hot topic about hydrogen, and also being among these distinguished panelists for the day. The topic for Enel as well is one of the most important topics around the elements that we are trying to achieve with our best. Just few elements about Enel Green Power, worldwide speaking, the renewable energy branch of the group Enel, with a whole 32 countries, more than 8,000 workers. So the installed capacity is around 49 gigawatts for renewables, with more than 74 million end users and more than 70 million customers. Just to give a quick size of worldwide business of Enel Green Power and mostly around renewables. But then for more specifically about Morocco, we are here from a few years ago, since 2016, when we started working on the integrated wind program launched by ONIA at that time and the Minister of Energy. And we were awarded with our partner Nareva Holding and Siemens Gamesa the first public tender for the 850. Our presence is all over the country, and we already started with the first project of wind energy in country that will be commissioned by end of 2020. Those projects are mostly under a PPA contract with ONIA for 20 years. We are also in Morocco very active on the, I will say, free market under the law 1309, and we are having in the pipe more than 500 megawatts projects under development, with one of them well advanced and authorized under the law 1309 in the region of Kelmin, with a capacity of 80 megawatts. So technically, it's a project on the final steps to start the construction, inshallah. But we're also working to, I will say, prepare for the middle voltage market very soon. So going back, Sitarek and our distinguished panelists, to the topic today about hydrogen. Enel, as I said before, and Green Power are given high level importance. And just briefly going through steps to share and discuss together about the hydrogen along the lines for this summary, the markets we saw with the colleagues, the market, how it is today. I think it's not an issue of market, but it's mostly how the existing, I will say, business models will answer the need in the market in terms of how the offer will be sized in order to follow the trend of the market at the time and also the cost. So we'll be briefly also looking at Europe, how the push is going in that side, and how in our organization as Enel and Global Power Generation taking the lead in some areas in that regard. So briefly starting with the hydrogen, I know very well that everyone here knows very well, but sometimes refreshing minds helps a lot to get back in a very good point of the discussion. The annual hydrogen production consumes more than 205 billion cubic meters of natural gas and more than 107 million tons of coal, and also is responsible of more than 830 million tons of daily emissions, comparable to Indonesia and the UK combined. So that is alerting a little bit that there is an issue about climate change and also the responsibility of any business models that will come in on using hydrogen to be more and more green hydrogen to respond to the existing demand. So around 17 million tons a year of dedicated hydrogen I produce it today, just to take this snapshot on it, 76% from natural gas, 22% from coal, and 2% from electricity only. So just putting in place that there is a need, and I will say increased need for a certification of the origin of the hydrogen, more and more important by different markets. And for sure, we will see in a few slides how things will be moving through this market. Kind of rainbow explaining a little bit the good colors of the source of production of the hydrogen. Left side is mainly about the classical sources for the natural gas, oil, and coal, but then the other ones are mostly coming from future low or no carbon means of hydrogen production using electrolyzer from renewables, natural gas, but combined with carbon capture and electrolyzers from nuclear energy as well. The market, as I said before, it's not a problem of size of the market, but it's mostly how the answer to the markets from the existing business models will be done in order to follow the two elements of being green, sustainable, but at the same time having an acceptable cost and sustainability. So the hydrogen demand has tripled since 1975 and is expected to rise in the future. Around more than 70 million tons of hydrogen per year is used today in pure form, mostly from oil, mining, and ammonium manufacture for fertilizers. A further 42 million tons of hydrogen is used in industry without prior separation from other gases. So we see that there is an increased trend over the years, and there is also huge consumption from the industrial side. So we see exactly how the market is sized in a way of sizing a little bit the demand, but at the same time, how in upstream the industries to produce, I would say, specific offer should be following that trend in a very smart way. The European outlook, as I said before, is one of the elements that is pushing more and more for a hydrogen roadmap to be in place. It's just a map that we try to put in place to summarize a little bit over the last month since June 29, 2019 till I will say now. The main elements that were done, mostly starting from Italy, where they had a roundtable about hydrogen discussing what would be the barriers and enablers to have hydrogen technologies development in country. Since then, in Australia, in November 2019, the hydrogen becomes as national strategy integrated in the energy. And they put in place very specific objectives with a target of cost to be in place in country. Germany as well took the lead in that regard in June 2020 by having national hydrogen strategy and put in place that hydrogen could be a leader and establish Germany in this market as one of the leaders with specific targets of having 5 gigawatts by 2030 and more 5 gigawatts by 2035 with a dedicated budget of around 7 billion euros at national level, but also collecting by leveraging effect more than 2 billion at national level. So mostly only green hydrogen to be sustainable in long term. That's why there is a dedicated objective in that regard in strategy of Germany. Portugal in July 2020 followed the same trend by putting in place a leading approach in reducing natural gas imports, but put in place a dedicated budget of 0.9 billion euros to, I will say, push the investment in a positive way and the developers of project to work in that regard, with a dedicated target of more than 2.1 gigawatts by 2030. France, same with the recovery plan, followed by the COVID-19 situation, put in place a hydrogen and decarbonized strategy with a target of 6.5 gigawatts by 2030 and a budget of 7.2 billion by 2030. Same thing for Spain, putting in place a hydrogen roadmap to become a producer and exporter with a target of 4 gigawatts by 2030 and a dedicated budget of almost 9 billion euros planned investments from private sector. Chile, same thing, as a country very active in renewable energies, put in place a clear strategy to launch a public consultation how to produce the cheapest green hydrogen by 2030 and become having an objective one of the top 3 exporters worldwide of hydrogen by 2040, with a dedicated budget of 40 million euros to achieve that target and a targeted price of $1.5 per kilogram of green hydrogen by 2030. So it clearly shows the way that this momentum, it's not only at Europe, it's international. Not, I would say, missing Morocco and decision that were, I would say, done by the minister, by Mazen, and also by all the stakeholders in Morocco shows clearly that the budget is in country in place, the will is in place, the roadmap is already done, and Morocco is also following and leading in a way this kind of roadmap for the hydrogen. So in Enel Green Power, we started taking, I would say, this into our business with a campaign of communication, internationally speaking, with a narrative about hydrogen, first of all, in Brussels to have the European Union coverage. And then our CEO shared an official letter with the policy makers and almost some very active think tanks and associations. And some of the results of that is that had a kind of, I would say, return back in terms of feedbacks, positive ones, that shows the way for Enel by September 2020. And we became a member of the Clean Hydrogen Alliance and decided to join the Association of Hydrogen in Europe to show exactly that we are fully committed to integrate hydrogen as one of our business lines inside the business model we do have in place. So the main focus of Enel is mostly, as we said before, once we discussed the market segments still that we are targeting the industrial segments with a specific focus on power to chemicals, about decarbonization of the feedstock. We spoke this morning and the day before mostly about hydrogen for ammonia, about refineries, methanol and steel. So there are many, I would say, ways of hydrogen to be used in the industrial sector, and also the power to heat, which is also one of the most, I would say, segments that can be absorbing a lot the focus of our business model. Transport is not far away, but it needs a bit of time, but it is not in very short term. Rather, it is in buildings and the power are different business models that are considered by others, but just sharing with you our main focus, which is still industry as the main focus, and then with a lower one on additional segments like power to electrofuels and power to mobility fuel. The business model, as I said before, is targeting a hybridization solution expected to generate a greater value through an equation which is making a kind of hybrid renewable energy system plus hydrogen with a clear value proposition around competitive, full decarbonized offer. But for sure, we said that before, we are facing an issue of climate change, increased CO2 emissions. Any business model should be first responsible, sustainable, and fully decarbonized in order to follow the trend of that market in a very smart way by building renewable energy sources, electricity, and green hydrogen supply. Targeted customers are mostly around the market that is designed in the pipe that we saw before, and the technologies, that is the points that normally colleagues start talking about, but I'm raising it again, about the electrolyzing our suppliers in market that will help a lot in terms of providing innovative solutions with very competitive costs. So the main value drivers will still the renewable energy plant optimization and most saving that could be done on the CapEx and the OpEx systems from the synergies with existing renewable energy plants. On top of our preferred models, the standalone configuration will be an additional option. But mostly the co-located options and standalone are the best options that can be done. And many of the colleagues in their presentation shows similar examples, but just to share with the audience as well, some of the existing technological solutions, I will say a combined electrolyzer with the storage solutions on site with a renewable energy platform in order to have a green electricity and then feed in the electrolyzer process to have a green hydrogen to supply a market at the end of the line. The standalone can be another solution, but then there is also another way to make the combination within the market, and it's also doable and feasible from a business model configuration standpoint. The Enel Green Power focus, I'll say geographically speaking, we are already having in the pipe specific projects in the US, in Chile, in Spain, Italy, and that's to share with you that we are having more than 14 countries who are developing right now hydrogen projects in the advanced level. Morocco and South Africa are really our targeted short-term also areas of activity in the hydrogen hot topic. So that's really important to raise and to share with you and also with the audience, because we know that there is a great momentum in Morocco around hydrogen, very active activities on the renewable energy sector. So there is a clear, I would say, opportunities to work together with the Morocco institutions and also industrial players in order to win together in that regard of putting in place pilots for hydrogen and very active in the industrials. Our vision on hydrogen and the electrification offers the cheapest and simplest route to decarbonize large portion of total final energy users. But hydrogen best use can be and should be complementing the electrification. There is no competition in that regard. We have to achieve a decarbonized offer in those sectors. The hydrogen needs to be, in our opinion, 100% renewable electricity energized, because it's really important to achieve the objective of green hydrogen and also help a lot in terms of having a hydrogen business model that fully integrates our strategy in terms of, I will say, combining renewable energies electrification, supporting also the new customers to reach their decarbonized targets. And I think that's one of the elements that helps not only in country to help industries to be competitive in terms of costs, but we all know that there is also additional barriers to markets. And I'm just sharing one of them, which is the carbon border adjustment that is prepared by Europe, and many others will be coming in the near future. And we have to be aware of that. I think it's all from my side, Tariq, and I will be very happy to answer your question.
Thank you very much, Abdillah. I think due to the limitation of time, we will come back later on the question. So I propose to go now with Hanan Morshidi, Senior Vice President of Sustainability Platform and Circular Economy at OCP Group. Hanan, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haman. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Very happy and honored to be part of this very high-level panel and sharing this very insightful discussion. I'm trying to share my screen. I understand that we have a matter of time, so I will try to go very quickly through my presentation. I hope that you are able to see my screen now. Is it okay? Someone can just confirm, please.
Yes, it's okay. Perfect.
Thank you very much. So, my pleasure is to share with you today OCP's engagement for the industry decarbonization in general, and especially the green ammonia as a lever to use for decarbonizing the scope 3 of our activity, starting maybe first by introducing my company. And our mission that we consider as very sustainable mission that consists of feeding the soil to feed the planet. We are phosphates, castodians, and fertilizer producers for the world. OCP is today a global phosphate leader. We are the first producer exporter of phosphate rock and fertilizers under all their form. We have 31% of the global market share, and we conducted a very ambitious industrial program to double our capacity of mining capacity and triple our fertilizer production capacity in less than 10 years. OCP started as a mining company in 1920, and in 1965, we turned to valorize our rock and to start producing fertilizers. And over the last decade or even more, we engaged in many cooperations and JV creation to support our activity. We had some industrial JVs, but also services, like our JV with Jacobs for engineering, JESA, which is today the first engineering company in Africa, our JV with IBM to support our digitalization journey, and our filière, if I can say, our subsidiary, OCP Africa, to handle the green revolution in Africa. Within all this industrial transformation, sustainability and circular economy have been at the heart of our program. Today, we have a very high ambition for sustainability and circular economy, and we set really challenging goals for us, like to reach 100% clean energy consumption by 2030 and to reach zero consumption of water, conventional water in the same time. And in terms of decarbonization, we aim to be carbon neutral by 2040, which makes OCP a part of a very reduced and avant-gardist club for carbon neutrality in the world. As you can see, for energy today, 87% of our consumption is already clean, coming from cogeneration and renewable energy through some PPAs to consume wind energy that we contracted with our partners. Today, as you can see within our sites, our biggest platform, which is also the biggest platform for fertilizer production in the world, is 100% covered by clean energy coming from cogeneration and energy efficiency, which is Georges Phosphore. Safi as well, 75% is covered by cogeneration, and 3 out of 4 mines are today 100% consuming only wind energy. Now, we also work on a very high ambition, as I said, to achieve our neutrality by 2040, with a lot of projects ongoing for CO2 capture technology prospection, improving cogeneration and energy recovery, starting a solar program for our own consumption with some studies for solar power plants construction, carbon farming, marine reclamation, afforestation, green mobility, and last but not least, green ammonia as a real lever that we rely on to complete this neutrality ambition by 2040. Here, as you can see, some highlights of different contributors to our carbon footprint today and how these contributor projects are helping us to reach this neutrality ambition. So we are working on CO2 capture and transforming the CO2 into biomass or fuel like methanol, etc. We have this energy roadmap for 100% clean energy everywhere. We work on solar drying and thermal technology to substitute our fossil fuels consumption in our sites. Green mobility, and all these projects are coming to improve and reduce or offset our direct and indirect emissions related to scope 1 and 3. But green ammonia is a really specific project because green ammonia is helping us to decarbonize our scope 3, or what we call our supply chain scope. Because OCP today does not produce green ammonia. We are the first importer of ammonia in the world. So we don't have an internal ammonia production, but because we are aware of all the CO2 coming from this ammonia production and our indirect responsibility on this entrant to our process. So we are working very hardly to improve the technologies and to adapt them to reach this green ammonia or ammonia decarbonization process. So we started by thinking about the most valuable and reliable way to decarbonize, and we found out that all the components are actually mature, because today energy is becoming cheaper. Green energy technology productions are really improving every day. Electrolysis exists already all over the world. There are lots of technologies for electrolysis that are already proven. Haber-Bosch process is well known and mastered around the world, but the combination of all this is quite difficult, because what is the optimum, what is the best technology that fits with this challenge of energy intermittency that will be in the inlet of this process? What are the storage, or both for hydrogen or for energy, that will be needed to reach the optimum cost of all this? So these questions are still on the table, and we decided to start by a pilot unit that will gather different technologies, different possibilities, and will allow us to simulate different energy profiles in order to get some response and help our studies for the scale up in the future. Here is our pilots. It's conducted with the support of Green Energy Park, our JV with IRESEN, the IRESEN Institute, Fraunhofer Institute, and GESA is doing all the engineering work for this project. Added to this, we think that, as it has been said by the different panelists, Morocco is a real candidate for getting to a green ammonia competitive price because of the mix of solar and wind energy that exists in our country. And then we have all the components and the factors to be able to reach the lowest energy, green energy price to support this research. So coming back to the challenges and opportunities. For us, the first challenge, I confirm what all has been done before, is the energy cost, because this green ammonia production and hydrogen in general needs really high energy quantities. We talk about 10 megawatt hour needed for 1 ton of ammonia, and within the cost structure of ammonia production, 80% belongs directly to the energy cost. Plus all the energy costs, we have all the technical challenges highlighted before. Intermittency, we need to figure out what is the best technology that helps to overcome this challenge and to avoid and to fit with this starting and stop, micro-start and stop times that will face this production chain. We need also to work on hydrogen management. What is the optimum storage needed? How to handle the safety of all this, and finally the scale up, because scale up or big scale needs a big footprint, lots of surface, big investments, much challenging security issues. So we need to figure out all this, and the pilot will not be sufficient to respond to all these questions, but the ongoing studies could be fit and could be fed by this the outcomes from the pilot. But there are also some opportunities that we need to integrate about the cost structure, and especially the market demand for decarbonized products and green products, especially in Europe with the European Green Deal, because Europe is aiming today to reach the carbon neutrality by 2050, and there are upcoming taxes that will be applied depending on the carbon factor of each product. So these figures should be integrated in the overall cost analysis and cost expectation regarding ammonia production. For energy costs, it's definitely promising. We've seen the cost of energy been reduced over the last decade. Here is a figure coming from the International Energy Agency that shows the average price of energy, photovoltaic energy and wind electricity over the last years, and the reduction is really promising. Today, the numbers that are announced around the world are much more interesting. We've seen numbers coming from the Middle East, from Portugal, etc., being less than 2 cents per kilowatt hour. And this is the, if I can say, the trigger that is already identified for green ammonia. To reach green ammonia competitive price under $300 or $350, we need to be really lower than $2 per kilowatt hour. However, this is an average cost by date of commissioning. It's not integrating all the transportation costs, all the storage options, all the cost of batteries, all what we need to reach a load factor of 7,000 hours per year, which is the optimum today shared for the electrolyzer running. So we need to be at least at 7,000 hours per year, and to reach this number, all the upcoming decisions like transporting energy or mixing solar and wind or storing some energy for running the pilot or the units by night will necessarily come with more cost, and sometimes our figures show that the energy price could double. The second question is about the technology option. We are facing today two known technologies, which is the alkaline one and the PEM. The alkaline is a really mature technology for electrolysis, and it's less expensive than the PEM. However, the PEM is showing a real opportunity for cost decrease, for price decrease, and the PEM responds more quickly to renewable intermittency and variation. So thus we decided to test both technologies in our ammonia pilot before the scale-up. Here you have the scope of the pilot. It's a 4 ton per day unit, R&D unit, with 2 megawatts of PEM and 2 megawatts of alkaline electrolysis technology. In the inlet, we will have the possibility to simulate different curves and different profiles of energy. We think that it's a very interesting option because we have many locations within our country with different energy profiles. Regarding wind and solar, the south is much more served in terms of solar and wind mixed. We have more solar in our mines, but we have more wind across our transformation and industrial units. So this pilot will allow us with a simulation component to simulate the different variations and profiles of these locations and to see how we can use transportation to have the best curve and the most optimized curve for ammonia production. Then we have air separation and the nitrogen storage unit, and we will have also an alkaline electrolyzer, which is a technology ready technology, if I can say, and a PEM technology for 50% of the capacity, and hydrogen storage, and then we will ensure stability for the Haber-Bosch loop. This pilot plant is also constructed with the aim to add future new electrolysis technologies for testing, like the solid oxide technology, for example. Then the work in progress through OCP pilots and studies is aiming to test different technologies, to test ammonia production under intermittent environment, to optimize the power to ammonia supply chain and energy storage, as well as hydrogen storage solutions and safety. And the main question that is raised, not within the pilot, but we are working on through different studies to complete this roadmap. It's how about byproduct valorization? What about the oxygen coming from ammonia production? And is the oxygen valorization in different possibilities within our industrial facilities could really help to improve the ammonia costs? This is the most important question that we are trying to answer today. And for us, this is a trigger that could really change the business economic model for the ammonia production. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanan, for this great presentation. And we are very happy to say that things are under the appropriate path on the development of this pilot. Now we are going to Mr. Miguel, who is CEO of Energy Services Morocco. Mr. Miguel, the floor is yours. As agreed, I mean, we are, I think, over time. If we can take 5 minutes, please, for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I understand that I have 5 minutes and that we are about 20 minutes late. So I will try to simplify my messages. But thank you for inviting me, and thank you for that very interesting discussion around renewable energy and renewable hydrogen, rather. At ENGIE, I will not go through what we do in hydrogen. Caroline Heidegger, our COO for our hydrogen operation, talked yesterday about what ENGIE does. But one thing, our ambition is to be one of the front runner in the development of renewable hydrogen along the value chain. And we're coming from two worlds, the world of natural gas. We are one of the largest operator of natural gas networks. And we're coming also from the world of renewable energy. We are operating, as you see here, the Tafaya wind farm in Morocco, which is 101 megawatt of capacity. And we're approaching hydrogen with very concrete projects. One example in the Mogalaguena platinum mine with Anglo-American, where we're putting together the first renewable hydrogen chain to supply mining trucks with hydrogen, something that can be replicated in other mining operations, dear Hanan, for example, in Morocco. The challenges, cost is of course the issue. Cost and load factor for renewable energy on the one hand, going to scale on the electrolyzers on the other, and having also a distribution and storage chain which is affordable. I will not go into the third part, which would require another hour or so, but I want to go down to learning rates. What do we need to accomplish to get to affordable green hydrogen? Today, roughly, we are at about $6 per kilogram. We need to get down to about 2.5, 2.6. It's a 60% reduction. About 50% of that will need to come from the electrolyzers investment itself. About 45% will need to come from the reduction in energy costs. Oversimplifying it, but those are the key points. And so we need to go down to the learning rates, what I call the learning rates. For every doubling of capacity, you have here the reduction in costs on the left-hand side for the electrolyzers, in the center for the fuel cells, and on the right for renewable technology. What you can see is that for electrolyzers, every doubling of capacity translates into a 9 to 13% reduction in cost. not bad, not that high, but not bad. For fuel cells, it's between 11 and 17% reduction in cost for every doubling of capacity. And for renewable technology, this is between 35 and 40%. Much faster learning rates. And so at ENGIE, we strongly believe that affordable renewable hydrogen is around the corner. The topics today is how to get to scale. And to get to scale, we need to go down those learning curves. So Paul mentioned we can't predict the future. Actually, we are always right on the evolution of cost, but often wrong as to the timing at which we get to those cost levels. And this is essentially because of these learning rates. And so the issue for the industry is to collectively, and for the stakeholders, is to collectively have the right incentive to get to scale. If we do that, if we want to have affordable renewable hydrogen, if we want to be in that $2 per kilogram range, that graph shows you the level of electricity cost on the left-hand side and the level of a capex per kilowatt for the electrolyzers. Today, we are in the on the market for the LCOEs of renewable energy. We are for offshore wind, which is one of the higher cost renewable energy, around the $20 to $30 per megawatt hour. We're about there. As far as the electrolyzers is concerned, we need to go down to between, let's say, $300 and $500 per kilowatts to get to those $2 per kilo of renewable hydrogen. And we need to get to scale for that. And some consider that to go down that learning rate on the electrolyzer side, about 70 gigawatt of capacity will need to be installed. That's quite significant. I think I have done my 5 minutes. One last word on why I think Morocco is the right place to invest in renewable energy. You have here a comparison between renewable hydrogen produced through electrolyzers. Those are the green bars, and blue hydrogen, the red bars from natural gas without CCS. The top of the green bars are 2020 figures. The bottom ones are 2030 figures. For natural gas, the bottom level of the bar are the 2030 figures, and the top one are the 2020 figures. Why is it increasing in the case of natural gas? Why is it increasing in the case of natural gas? That's because of the cost of CO2, which is increasing. What do you see here? That the areas where renewable hydrogen is competitive or will be competitive in the very near future are Chile, large capacity in terms of electrolyzers, low renewable cost, China, no surprise, and North Africa for its very low renewable energy cost. I will finish with that. One area where we will need more time for renewable hydrogen to be competitive with blue hydrogen is Europe. And so, again, to finish on that, I'm a strong believer, and we're a strong believer at ENGIE, that Morocco has a role to play, North Africa in general, but Morocco has a role to play because of its access to affordable energy in the route to affordable renewable hydrogen. And a joint venture between Morocco and Europe might be the answer to accelerate access to affordable green hydrogen. Thank you with that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miguel, for this great presentation. And we fully confirm that Morocco is and should play a role of pioneer on this field, taking advantage all what you said, the great resources in terms of wind, solar, the infrastructure that exists, and the interconnection with Europe for both electrical interconnections, but also gas interconnections. And I am very happy now to conclude this session and to present Mr. Higman, which is our last intervenant in this session. Mr. Higman is the initiator and co-founder and vice chairman of the African Hydrogen Partnership, AHP, as well as the director of HIPOA. The AHP is actually the only continent-wide African umbrella association solely dedicated to development of green hydrogen and also all around green hydrogen based chemical fuel cell technology, and also developing opportunities, business opportunities in Africa around this subject. This item is incorporated in Mauritius and non-aligned countries, ideally for building connectivity relationship across the entire continent, but also with North Africa and also different Arabic countries. So thank you very much also, Mr. Higman. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sigurd Hugman. I'm the vice chairman and co-founder of the African Hydrogen Partnership. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here at this fine event today. So since only a few minutes are left, I jump right in, and please let me share my monitor with you. Can you see my monitor and hear me well?
Yes, perfect. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so quick agenda, just a few words about the African Hydrogen Partnership, a quick introduction, then something in terms of the goals, specifically talking about transformation processes, relocation, refinance, and then questions and answers if we still have time for that. As it was already said during the introduction, the African Hydrogen Partnership is currently the only continent-wide African umbrella association solely dedicated to the development of green hydrogen. We specifically focus on the green technology because we believe that in general, Africa has a tremendous potential for developing green technology. And of course, in this context, the potential for significant cost reduction, as we have learned during the earlier presentation. The African Hydrogen Partnership represents the whole African continent and all African nations. It is a multi-stakeholder organization, so we're aiming for attracting industry, associations, research institutes, universities, and large end consumers. And we seek a close cooperation with national governments and supranational organizations. The African Hydrogen Partnership has been successfully incorporated in Mauritius last month. Mauritius is, of course, as a well-known fact, one of the most business-friendly countries worldwide. But what is equally important, it's a non-aligned country. And so it's really good for building constructive relationships across the entire continent and bringing the Arabic North and Sub-Saharan African countries together. And we hope that
Mr. Hugman. I think we
have been incorporated in November 2020, so just a few weeks ago. And we would start accepting members in the first quarter of next year, so in a few weeks from now. Very likely it will be around about the end of January. So in terms of the goals, transformation, relocation, finance, just a few remarks. We are really focusing on economically and commercially feasible programs. The time horizon is, and that is in line with all the previous presentations, around about 5 to 10 years. And I think we all agree that we really have to start working now so that important goals in terms of 2030 can be reached in a timely fashion, because those large scale programs cannot be developed quickly. In terms of the African Hydrogen Partnership, we support development, business development for foreign as well as domestic markets. Foreign means basically exporting hydrogen, green hydrogen, from the African continent to Europe, as well as other regions of the world. And domestic markets, that means basically for the benefits of the African economic benefits and business development benefits of the African nations. In terms of the foreign and domestic policies, I believe it's important to stress that these two things go hand in hand, and they shouldn't be viewed separately, because the economic development always relates to fiscal policy as well as to the trade balance. And here, export markets can help greatly initially. So in very simple terms, models could apply concessions for fees, so similar to the fossil fuel industry, while the development of the domestic markets is associated with a reduction of the import of expensive and very costly fossil fuels. So they are complementary, those two developments, and should always be viewed together. We'll try to help in developing markets, as well as matching supply and demand chains, and that is not only that it does not only relate to the business development as such, it relates, call it, to the economic development, because we always have to bear in mind that in Europe, for example, the national treasuries collect huge amounts of taxes from fossil fuels. And of course, one needs to come up with competitive solutions regarding green hydrogen, so that the treasuries do not lose tax revenues. And ideally, we would like to offer solutions where they can see in 10 to 15 years from now, we will not only lose revenues, we will be able to reduce any form of subsidies significantly. In terms of the real business related, so the commercial development, we would like to work with our members and partners together on the end consumer side, which means, trying to find ways how we can come to large offtake agreements. So that could be initially non-binding offtake agreements based on indicative forward pricing. Then that, at a certain point in time, can then be transformed into binding offtake agreements. I already mentioned here the aspect related to concessions and fees for the export markets, so that the national government can grant concessions and will collect fees in return, or whatever type of fee sharing model could be applied. In terms of the risk return aspect, a bit of my background as well. So I'm a finance quant, and risk and return, of course, is very important for me, specifically talking about fixed income as well as derivative instruments. So the country risks need to be diversified. And here Africa has to offer great opportunities as well, because we have to bear in mind that large end consumers in foreign markets will be reluctant signing offtake agreements based on a hydrogen source that only is domiciled in one country, right? And here the cooperation as well, collaboration amongst or with various African nations together can help greatly. Additionally, free markets, which means getting then all the stakeholders involved, specifically talking about the financial institutions, so the corporate investment banks, development banks, buy-side asset management firms, right from the start, will help putting those plans together. And that then is a joint combined approach, and I believe that this is a good way forward if we, Africa as a whole, all nations there work closely together. So it's in very simple terms, it's a transformation of the industry from oil to hydrogen. So from foreign oil, to be more precise, to domestic hydrogen. That will automatically reduce the call it trade balance related deficits that are related to the import of costly fossil fuels, and should be transformed then, so to say, in very simple terms, in green hydrogen related surpluses, and costly oil outflows, cash outflows, should be transformed and refinanced into hydrogen inflows. All of that is a big would have large positive economic impacts, and consequently this will help us to create a sustainable domestic wealth creation for economic, environmental, and social benefits. Yeah, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please feel free and ask.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hugman, for this very informative presentation, and also thank you for this great initiative that is actually very important for African countries. I think we need such kind of initiative and organization in order to support the development of this field and to support this shift from carbon industry into free carbon industry. Actually, we can ask many questions, but due to we already are 55 minutes over the time. So I have only one question, actually, how we can become a member of this organization? What is the process?
Yeah, so as I already said, very likely we will open up the organization for new members in January. So I expect end of January, beginning of February, around that time. Then we make all the information available online, and we will share then this information with our with the members on our contact list, as well as all sorts of other organizations. So we'll make it public. If you then have any questions, we'll help you then accordingly. In terms of the setup, please allow me to mention important aspects as well. We have worked together with the world leading legal advisors as well as corporate lawyers in Mauritius. I mean, they're well-known names. You would know them, but for reasons of confidentiality, I do not want to mention that here on the call. And we are going to comply in terms of external rules, contractual agreements, as well as our own internal rules to the highest standards. Yeah. So we have very strict compliance rules in place, and for that reason, we are only accepting organizations and no individuals as members.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we can now conclude this session. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to ask all the questions we want to address. But thanks to all panelists for this great presentation. I think it's clearly shown here that we are, the world now is committed in order to develop and reduce the the carbon foot. And I think that hydrogen and the power to X industry is clearly identified as one of the main industry and main technology that can support to achieve this goal. It's clearly shown also that the main challenge now is cost, how to reduce the cost of the generation of all hydrogen and all products around power to X. And it's clearly also defined that the generation of electricity is the key factor, which represent more than 70% of the cost of the hydrogen and the main of the product that can be produced from hydrogen. And here I think that Morocco is clearly defined as one of the leader on that field, and we can be clearly positioned as a leader in the development of the power to X industry, taking advantage of what we've seen before. So thanks of all for this great session. We hope to meet with you in the nearest future physically, and stay safe. It's quite hard time with the coronavirus now. I think we should take care, stay safe until we can get the vaccine, because I think this is the only exit from this situation. Thanks again, take care, and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for a most fascinating session. We heard about crazy ideas becoming realities on the ground, and that reminded me of a quote from Albert Einstein, who once said that creativity is intelligence having fun. And clearly the session that we just enjoyed was a beautiful example of collective intelligence, looking at challenges, identifying opportunities, priorities, and also saying that 2050, when it comes to the global change needed for the infrastructure, is already tomorrow morning. We'll be connecting again in about 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, about 20 minutes, more or less. Yeah, about 20 minutes to discuss the next session of our panel. And the next session, we will be looking at an international benchmark when it comes to power to X deployment. Thank you very much for your attention. It's always a pleasure to hear our friends at Mazen, OCP, and from all over the world discussing fascinating issues. And talk to you soon. Thank you.